Okay, Madam Chair Granardis, we are live, so I will turn controls over to you.
Thank you very much. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to this joint meeting between Community Board 10 and Community Board 11, the Parks Committee. I welcome you all to this gathering this evening. Our first meeting tonight is going to be a presentation about the Greenway Promenade, the Destination Greenway project that is a capital project funded by our Councilman Justin Brannan. We would like to welcome our Parks Commissioner, Marty Mayer, and we welcome you to our meeting. It's very nice to have you participate with us. I'd also like to welcome our Community Board 10 District Manager, Josephine Beckman, and her colleague from District 11, Marnie Elias Pavia, and my counterpart in Community Board 11, Eileen LaRufa. We are anxious to see this presentation. So without further ado, I would like to turn the meeting or the presentation over to our Parks Department. And I believe Eric Linsalata is going to
I think Marty, if you wanted to just explain the capital project for the Shore Road Promenade. And we're also joined by Davey Ives. I've just promoted him to panelist. He's Chief of Staff to Commissioner Marr. So Commissioner Marr.
Sure. So first of all, thank you, Community Boards 10 and 11, and thank you, Diane, for the introduction. Just a minor correction. This isn't about the Destination Greenways. The Destination Greenways is a conceptual project that's not funded at all. This is about the rehabilitation of the bike path itself. The Destination Greenways is a conceptual thing that I know there have been a couple of meetings about that for future stuff. This is about the reconstruction of the Shore Parkway South bicycle path from the bridge, Verrazano Bridge, down to Bay Parkway. I'm joined by our Chief Engineer, Eric Linsalata, and our Chief of Staff for all of Brooklyn, Davey Ives, I'll ask them to join in if I need that. So you are right to thank Councilmember Brannan for arranging for the funding. We're also always supported by Senator Granardis, and we appreciate both of them. You're very lucky to have them representing you. And thank you, Eileen and Marnie and Josephine and Diane for having us. So it's a little bit bigger than we originally started out. We started out with around 8 million. We spent some of that to do some pavement that's already been done, but then we were able to get some additional funds from Department of Environmental Protection to add to that. That bottom part that says program budget, sometimes what we do is we pool funds together to have a larger contract. So this is our state of good repair bundled contract. You get more economy of scale that way. So I just don't want anybody confused thinking we have 27.5 million for this. We have 8.16. Next slide. Everybody can see that, I hope, correct? So basically it's to bring the facility, the path up to a state of good repair, to extend its service life for continuous use for the least amount of maintenance, and to repair sinkholes and obviously repave the damaged areas. Next slide. So I think everybody knows where we're talking about. This is from the Verrazano Bridge along the Belt Parkway, from there to Bay Parkway. Next slide. So it is in the flood zone, as everybody here has experienced from Sandy. So we always take that into account when we're doing stuff. These circles, the next slide. We always look at what other park infrastructure is nearby. Obviously, this is a very heavily used piece of path. So we want to make sure we bring it up to a state of good repair, all of our parks. These are the access points to get there, the purple arrows that you see there. So with multiple entrances on and off here. Next slide. So this is just a little bit of background. Economic Development Corporation did an inspection in 2015. We got the funding. There was some design level inspections. We did decide to separate some of the funds so that we could do some of the paving of the worst areas. So we put that in what we call a limited scope contract, just to address those really bad areas. Everybody also knows that previous to all of this, there was some post-Sandy repair, and we did do about 15 years ago the part from 69th Street Pier to the Verrazano Bridge. And then we've been coordinating with Department of Environmental Protection. And so what you're looking at is the preliminary design. There's still a little bit more engineering to go, but we are hoping to get a letter of support from both community boards on this. Next slide. So everybody here knows the conditions. They are not good at all. The part you can see will go through here. You have some sinkholes, you have some cracking, you have some covered up area, but the part you can't see so easy is what we're showing here. While you do have some armor stone riprap for protection, there are breaches in the wall. There's blocks missing. Next slide. You can see the wave action that acts on that. Next slide. You can see the flooding that happens. Next slide. You can see the obvious cracking that we have throughout, and some of that cracking is deep, and there's some subsurface conditions there as well. Next slide. Here you can see where there is some existing armor stone, but there's gaps and shifting in the wall. Some of it is this large concrete block. Next slide. Some of it is these sort of pavers, the brick block, where they're either missing or they've fallen out or they need jointing up and pointing up. And that shifting from wave action and stuff can help cause some of the undermining that we see. Next slide. This here is a combined sewer outfall. There's a number of combined sewer outfalls along here from DEP, but this one is a particularly large one. It's basically a bridge, if you will, that combined sewer where it meets the water. You can see the deteriorated condition of the concrete supports on this. It's showing the rebar there. The concrete's been completely deteriorated some places. So one of the reasons we got DEP money is to reconstruct this so that it's safe and will last and extend the life of it. Next slide. So obviously this is not the full repair that we would love to see. We have a fairly limited budget. 8 million sounds like a lot of money. We're applying it the best way we can. It doesn't preclude us from doing more work in the future, whether that's elevation or whatever. Economic Development Corporation is our resiliency. I know that both boards of 10 and 11 have been advocating very hard for resiliency, not just for the normal safety, but to protect the Bell Parkway and so on. And so we should jointly continue that advocacy. Full reconstruction is 30 million. Reconstruction with upgrades is, roughly speaking, 34 million. This here is basically to extend the life of what we have with the budget that we have, the 8 million we have. Next slide. So these just show the areas that they're sort of keys. They show the areas and the different types of work. I'll summarize that at the end, but you can skip through. This is basically along the entire length. There's the CSO repair. So let's stop on this one. So one of the things that's very key is to put forms underneath that CSO, pump new concrete in, and completely stabilize that. So that's the CSO wall repair at that outfall, at that particular location, which is just near the bridge. The construction of the bridge does not affect this work at all. The bridge can continue the construction that DOT is doing at 17th Avenue. Next slide. So this just shows some of the existing riprap and the it's sort of three cross sections of the type of work that's being done. Fill in areas that have sort of subsided, resod them, resurface and repave, obviously, all the areas we haven't repaved, so it's safe for walking, pedestrian, and bicycle use. Again, fill in areas, repair the concrete retaining wall, and that's key because that helps stabilize and keep the subsurface conditions together. So where it's replacing stone that's missing, fixing the mortar joints that are happening, or replacing concrete that's missing in the middle section, And then in the right-hand section, it's also similar work where we're just repairing and correcting that seawall so it helps to contain the subsurface conditions that here. And obviously all that work happens. We'll also fix some of the damaged sewer areas where we need to as well. And that's basically the gist of the entire project. So it's repairing the seawall, it is doing the repaving, and that's basically the presentation. So I'm happy to answer, and again, this is from the Verrazano Bridge to Bay Parkway. I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Diane, you know what? I'm going to stop the sharing just so we could see our participants. It's just a little bit easier for the moment. I know we have some questions. And then if need be, we could put it back up, Marty.
Sure.
Let's see, Diane. So we have two hands raised. I see Ann Flutico and Doris Cruz.
Yeah, we'll start with Ann.
Thank you. So question is, when the $8 million project is completed, it would essentially be superseded or undone by either the 30 million or the $34 million project, because those will be a change in elevation.
So what's not being done here, there's not additional armor stone being added. There's not every CSO being repaired. It's to basically do a complete reconstruction. So we're not really wasting any money here. If there was a desire, and I don't know that elevation is included even in the $34 million estimate, it's probably much higher than that. I'll ask Eric to chime in a minute, but it's the only thing that you would have to redo is the surface part. Eric, you want to chime in here?
Yeah, when we started this project, and actually even before, when we were looking at Shore Parkway for years now, raising it and improving the flood protection's always been on our mind. But that's really an order of magnitude higher. I mean, that's really in the hundreds of millions of dollars is the challenge we have. So this project, we're designing it and we're approaching it such that these repairs are what's critical right now. If more money comes for more repairs in the future, that would be great. And if a lot more money comes for a mega project, that would be even better. But, in any event, this project is really important, we think, to do now to keep the thing usable.
Thank you.
Thank you for that question.
Doris?
Doris, you're on mute.
CB10 has always advocated for a complete rebuilding of the seawall. That is really what is needed. To me, this seems like a stopgap project. How long do you anticipate this will last before it's undermined by not fixing all of the underlying conditions?
So again, well, I'll ask Eric to answer in a minute. But again, we're doing work that is critical to extend the life of what's there now. We agree with you in advocating for the full Monty, if you will. But this is the money that we have, and we want to use this in a way that it's not going to be wasted, that extends the life and corrects the conditions we have now. Eric, do we know what the lifespan is?
Yeah, well, it's never possible to really accurately predict that. As an engineer, we always hate that question. But I can say that the repairs we're doing now will still be good and in effect, so they're better than Band-Aids. The structure itself is fundamentally stable, so we're not worried about the whole thing collapsing. Totally agree that for the long term, reconstruction would be the best thing we could do. But in the near term, for the next 5, 10, 20, 25 years, this kind of approach can work totally fine, in which we're going to probably in 10 years see a few other sections that need some additional repairs, and that's normal for a structure of this age. So the work we're doing now is not going to fall off. Those repairs aren't going to peel off, but we might need to go back and do some other repairs in other locations in probably about 10 years.
And why are you only doing one CSO?
That's the big one. We're doing repairs on some of the other pipes, but the big 4-barrel outfall is it's huge. And that's the one that we're really concerned about. The rest of them might be causing some local depressions and sinkholes, and we're going to be repairing those. But it's the big one that we're worried about for structural purposes.
Well, I'm concerned that they might only get worse. And then for this hand raised, why aren't you addressing from 69th Street to the Verrazano Bridge?
Again, so what we did about 15 years ago, we spent about $32 million doing from the 69th Street to the Verrazano Bridge. There was almost no riprap and armor stone there at all. There was sinkholes there that our park commissioner at the time, Adrian Benepe, was able to crawl into. We were able to get a good piece of that funding from DEP to repair outfalls and to do subsurface conditions. And we were able to do all of that work. So that work has happened. There has been some work since then because Sandy caused some work. We also had a few sinkholes there from shifting from time to time, and we were able to repair them. But the large scale work did happen at that location roughly between 12 and 15 years ago. So this section never got anything at all. And again, we agree with you that a rebuild is what's needed in the long range. That's not what we have. We have $8 million. It was allocated from the Verrazano Bridge to Bay Parkway. We are looking at the worst conditions and making them better and making it safe.
And then I would just like to put something I put in the chat. When this project is initially discussed, it's called the bike path. It is not the bike path. It is a shore road promenade with multiple uses. And I would really like the Parks Department to use that terminology.
It's actually Shore Parkway, not Shore Road. We have a different Shore Road promenade.
Well, I know
we
that,
agree
but-
with you. It's multiple use. We permit it for all kinds of things, races, fishing, just sitting and reading, having lunch. We agree with you wholeheartedly.
So please use the better terminology.
I apologize.
We also have Dan Heddix with his hand raised.
Yeah. Two questions, pretty quick. One is you referenced the EDC routine inspection. 2015 was the last one. Do we know how often those routine inspections are, as in how routine are they? As in, have there been others done in the area since 2015? And also for the main CSO outfall of 4 Bay, are there catchments going to be in place for floatable control? Some of the discharge control, is that existing now, or is it part of the reconstruction?
I can field that. Yeah, so the EDC Waterfront Inspection Program is relatively new. 2015 was one of the first years things were inspected. This was one of the early sites that got inspected. There haven't been any others at this location that were under this program. Had this not gotten funded, we would be putting it in for another inspection now. But since it's funded for capital money, that next inspection will happen after our project is done, because we don't want to waste the money if we're already going to be fixing it. With respect to the outfall, I don't believe there's any floatable catchment, like permanent structure that you might see at some other outfalls. That's really a question for DEP. They haven't asked us to put that in with this project. Maybe they will late in the game. It'll be a fun surprise when we're at 99% design, but we stand ready to help our sister agency with whatever they need.
Awesome. I'm looking forward to that report coming in after we complete and seeing how much, being able to gauge how much has been repaired out of the overall project. So that'd be excited to see that report done after. So.
And is your hand still up, or is that from before? Okay. Any other questions?
Yes, Jeff Harris. Mr. Harris, you're on mute.
Yep. How's that?
Perfect.
Okay. From 69th Street to the Verrazano has its own bike path within the structure. Is that going to be set up from Verrazano to Bay Parkway?
It's going to be basically the conditions that exist now, except new pavement. We know that it separates at some spots, that it's a pinch point in some spots. None of that's going to change. It's just going to have new surface and better subsurface condition.
So basically you're gonna have kids mixed in with the bike riders.
You're going to have the same conditions you've had for the past 50 years.
Well, is there any in the future doing the same as was done from the pier to the Verrazano, having its own bike path?
I would welcome the funding to do that. I don't have that right now.
So it's not in the works at any time?
No, it's not funded, no.
All right. That's an issue.
Commissioner, we have and Diane, we have a question in the chat. How long will this repair project last? Will the promenade be accessible during the project?
I would believe this portion we would want to close so that we could do it in a 12-month contract. You don't want to try, when you try to phase things, it extends the pain and it also extends the cost greatly. So this would be closed for the 1 year, right? It's a 12-month contract. Eric?
Yeah, we would aim for 12 months.
It would be for 12, and that's like going into the deep water instead of going to the shallow end or ripping a Band-Aid off. It's the quickest way to get the project done and done safely.
The only caveat I would add is if environmental permitting causes us to space it,
of course,
over seasons, but we are aiming for a 12-month.
Do you have another question in the chat? Do you have an estimated time frame when the project will begin?
No, we're still in the design phase and engineering phase now. Part of this review that we're doing now is part of that. So if both boards provide a letter for us, we can take that to the next phase of getting the approvals and permitting and stuff. Then we go into the procurement phase. Roughly speaking, that's about a year after we've gotten all the design and engineering approvals. Procuring a contract will take about a year or so, and then it's a year for construction.
So we're looking at possibly 2024?
I would say if everything falls in place and we don't have to rebid and you sign off on this tonight, we would probably, Eric, correct me if I'm wrong, we would probably start procurement in this coming fall of 2022 and be completed with procurement 2023. So I'd say spring of 2024 is the earliest that you would see construction.
Yeah, that's what I'm aiming for. A lot of that's going to depend on permitting, but basically as soon as this is done, our permit documents are going to go into the Army Corps and the DEC. We're getting those lined up right now.
And just for background for folks, having done this for 38 years, when the contract is ready to go, and you have all the approvals, you get started. If it starts in the spring, you lose a summer no matter what, you lose a season no matter what. So you always want to start as soon as the contract is ready to go.
Okay. Any other questions? Jeff, do you still have your hand up or is that from before? That's okay. Josephine, do you see anybody else or Marty?
Yeah, I do see some questions in the chat. Will the highway be impacted? And also during the project, can you share if there will be closures, to the public during construction?
The entire section will be closed to the public for that 1 year that we just talked about in construction. From the Verrazano Bridge to Bay Parkway will be closed during the construction. It's for 12 months. That's for safety reasons and to expedite the construction. Absolutely. The highway will not be impacted at all.
Okay, and I'll just go through again. If you could just recap the project area, what does it cover? It covers from the Verrazano Bridge, correct?
Yes, from the Verrazano Bridge to Bay Parkway.
Okay, and there was one more question, Marty. Does the budget take inflationary measures into consideration?
Yes, when we do design and engineering, knowing that this is a several-year process, we sort of build in escalation for the year that we have construction. That doesn't mean that we've all been through COVID, we've all been through supply, but usually once a project is into a contract, we'll wind up making up any difference in cost.
All right, so I know there were a lot of questions about staging, and you did mention that this is very early, we're in design. So I think it might be a good idea, just throw it out there to both boards that when construction and, we go through the procurement process, we'll probably have another meeting just to talk about construction and stages and just to share with the community and get that word out at that time.
So just to talk about that, we would have the staging for the construction within the confines of the project on the Parks property. Since you're closing it anyway from the bridge to Bay Parkway, we would have the contractor stage within that area. So there'd be no other public impact that we would have.
Okay, Dan, your hand is up again, or is that from before? Up again.
Yeah, I just want to reiterate, especially just the criticality of the bike path on the Greenway system, closing down that entire section, especially for bikes when there's no other alternative safely or bike paths in the region that would make a east-west connection is vitally critical. So I just impress on parks to have some kind of alternative. I know that there are laws for providing alternative paths for bikers during street closures and things like that during construction. So I just want to make sure that we're not pushing people out onto dangerous streets for a year during construction for a critical greenway component.
Well, Daniel, I can't make you any promises. We'll consult with Department of Transportation to see what on-street routes are available, but understand that we're closing this completely for safety's sake.
Absolutely.
So we want people to be aware of that well in advance.
Doris?
Yes, I want to reinforce what Dan just said, because this is a really important juncture for cyclists, and they will need a safe alternative. Unfortunately, it will be a real loss for pedestrians and families. But we have to consider the transportation aspect of it also.
Thank you. Anne?
So if one were to not be in favor of this project, one would be in favor of doing nothing, because from what you described, it's this project, but no other larger project seems feasible or imminent.
There is nothing else funded right now.
Thank you.
But I would like to say, if I could just jump in a little bit, is that, I think from Board 10 have always had both the Shore Parkway Promenade, concern about the seawall and breaches and engineering study for the CSOs in the area as a top priority. And I know our colleagues in Board 11 share that with us. And I think we need to continue that advocacy, to our elected officials and continue to lead that advocacy moving forward. I know Doris and Ann, you still have your hands up? Do you have additional?
Put mine down. Mine's down.
Okay. Okay.
Okay, if there are no other questions,
Can I just jump in one moment?
Sure.
Yeah.
Hi. Marnie Elias Pavi, I'm the district manager, CB11. Commissioner, thank you for the presentation. We've discussed this area for many, many years, and it's been the #1 priority of Community Board 11 to address resiliency issues and structural issues. But I just have a very quick question about the 17th Avenue Outfall. I believe we discussed it previously. Is there anything in the design to prevent the salt water from gaining access, like a backflow of some sort? I know it's a gigantic tunnel, but one of the issues that we have there is during storm surges, the water enters that CSO and then enters our streets. Has DEP reached out to you to include any remediation in this design?
Not at this time. What we're doing here is purely structural. Systematic is stuff DEP would have to answer to.
Beautiful. Thank you so much.
And thank you both you and Josephine for coming out on the tour to look at the sites with Eric, Davey, and I.
Okay. Eileen, would you like to say anything before we proceed?
My only concern is the bridge that's being constructed. So that already is eliminating access to the part of the path that's going to be closed. So how many years are we talking?
For the bridge, I can't speak. This project is 1 year, 12 months.
Yeah, and I think Marnie, is it another, it's 2 years for the bridge?
Correct.
Yeah,
Where is the bridge?
17th Avenue.
overpass.
Oh, okay, thank you.
Just keep it in mind when everything gets crazy.
Diane, I see we have members of the public that have their hand raised. I'm not sure if it's regarding this topic. Did you want to go through? Anyone has additional questions?
Sure. I do see something in the chat. What precautions are being considered to control the rodents during the construction phase? Is that even anything that you take into account?
Anywhere in New York City where there's waterfront, there are rodents. I can't speak to what precautions will be taken. I know that the area will be fenced off for safety for people access. I can't speak to what rodent control will happen.
Okay. Josephine, I don't see anybody on here, so if you want to just go ahead and call on people.
Okay. So Georgine Kenny, I've allowed you to talk. Do you have a question regarding this topic?
Yes. Quick question. Just for clarification, will there be a separation between the pedestrians and the bicyclists, between the bridge and Bay Parkway?
The conditions that you have now will be the same conditions, except they will be new pavement, new seawall, and new subsurface.
But it's not safe. So can't they modify that for safety? I mean, the pedestrians should have some degree of safety.
There is no funding to do a whole separate path in this project.
Okay, and Angelo Bruno. I know Angelo has a question on the other project. Let me see if he has one for this. Bear with me. Okay, Angelo, you should be allowed to speak now. Do you have a question on this topic?
Yes, I do. I want to thank you so much for having me right now, and thank you for the Community Board 10 and 11 for hosting this. I'm a resident in this neighborhood for, I think, all my life, give or take a little bit on Bay 48th, and now I'm residing at 1013 Shore Parkway and facing the water, and I look at the bridge, and it's a beautiful area. But Georgine is right. The concerns and the safety of the people, even when I walk there with my wife, I have the guys on the rollerblades. I have the guys on the bikes. The regular pedestrian walking really takes his life in his hands. I understand you tell me about the budget that, you only have so much to do with, but I think something should be concerned about the safety of the people walking. I see a lot of people pushing some wheelchairs there during the week. We count too, not just the bike riders and stuff. So I know many times I hear the whistle or I hear a bell on a bicycle that I got to step out of the way, but they get pretty close to you and you're scared that you're going to fall down and get hurt. I would just hope that we could take that into consideration for the beauty before you do it. I understand about the budget. Believe me, city worked for 32 years, so I understand about budgets. But I think that's a main concern that we should be looking into.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Angelo. What we will do is we'll see if that the stenciling that sort of separates bike and pedestrian, we'll see if that can be incorporated. Eric, could you just make a note about that? And we'll see if we can get that in. That's not a, I just can't give you a separate path, but we can certainly look at doing some stenciling, and I appreciate the concern very much.
Anyone else? Okay. Well, I would maybe signage for non-motor vehicles to slow down. Okay, well,
That's
that's,
an excellent concept.
yeah,
Or not, they shouldn't be there at all.
you're right, absolutely. Well, then I would like to move for Community Board 10, for the members of the Parks Committee on Community Board 10. I will entertain a motion to prepare a letter of support for this capital project. Do I see anyone ready to make that motion?
So, okay, so we'll do this one board at a time, I guess. Let me just view. Okay, so I don't have a poll here on this. So you would need a second.
I'll second. Chris
Thank you.
Ellison.
Chris Ellison, second. So I guess by a show of hands on board 10, if Parks Committee members could just raise their hands. Okay, I got you all. Anyone opposed? Recusals, abstentions? Okay, so Marnie, Eileen, I'll turn it over to you for your board.
Yes, sure.
All right,
Eileen,
Marnie, you do.
well, you also have Sonia here, but Community Board 11, would you entertain a motion for a letter of support to move this
Yes.
project forward?
Yes.
We have Eileen,
Yes.
second. Jay Brown. Is there anyone up? We'll do it differently. Is there anybody opposed?
Nope.
Then all approved, carried. We'll get that out. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So we will be preparing 2 letters of support from the respective community boards, and we look forward to the completed project. Thank you very much.
We thank you very much for everybody's time. I know these things aren't, and we are aware that we still need to continue the advocacy for the larger plan. We join you in that, and we understand all the concerns raised. We will do our very best with the resources available, and it's always good to have a good partnership with CB10 and 11. So thank you all for your time. I have to leave. I know that you have some other issues. Park enforcement is joining you, and I know they've been monitoring some of those concerns, and we'll work closely with the police to try to address those as well. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. And Davey Ives, you have your hand raised?
Thank you, Commissioner.
Thank you so
you.
much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And you should be proud of your 2 sons.
Thank you.
I've known them since they were scouts. So.
Thank you.
Davey, did you want to add
I didn't
something?
mean to raise my hand. Sorry about
Okay.
that. I just want to say thank you, everybody. Yeah, we're joined by, we have Lawrence Major here from the regional manager for the area. And then we also have Captain Stanko from our Parks Enforcement Patrol. And I'm not sure if we have anyone else, potentially our Inspector Benny McCants. I don't know if he joined, so I don't know if he's a panelist or not.
I think the other parks enforcement are trying to log on to Zoom right now, so it
Great.
might be in a few minutes.
Okay, yeah, and we're a few minutes ahead of schedule, and I think most people are here already. I just see our captain just came on from the 6-8 precinct, so I just promoted him into the main room.
Monifa Edmondson too is
Okay,
our manager.
I see her. I just want to make sure everyone's in the meeting room, and then we could get started with the next topic.
Josephine, Captain Chen is also on.
Captain Chen, okay, I see you. I see Sergeant Alexander. I've just promoted you to panelist. Anyone I've missed from PEP or
Maybe anyone from PEP who's on at the moment, if you could just message the panelists with a introduction of who you are.
So we have our new captain on. Her name is Captain Bedward. She hasn't quite joined the borough yet. She's kind of just joining as to view and get a better idea of some of the community members and what's going on. I'm trying to connect with Director McCants to see if he's logging on.
Okay, great.
So sorry. Hello, everyone. Sorry about that. I don't know if you can hear me. Hi.
Hi, Captain. How are you?
Sorry, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Sorry, I'm at Bushwick Inlet, so I'm trying to get familiar with the borough. So I had a couple issues hearing you guys before, but as my partner said, I'm Captain Bedward. I'll be coming to the borough in about a week. Very excited. I'm actually a Brooklyn native, so it'll be a pleasure to work in a borough that I live in, born in, love very much. I'm looking to join you guys in the efforts to get a better.
Great, thank you. Diane, I guess we could begin. I think everyone on our call, and it looks like the attendees from the community are well represented here. And if it's okay with you, I think what I could do is I could share just a couple slides and give a summary on the second item on the agenda for Parks, PEP, and NYPD, if that's okay with you, Diane?
That's absolutely fine. Go right ahead.
Okay, so on behalf of boards 10 and 11, we, hold on one second. Let me just see, Anna McCants.
I have it. Go
You
ahead.
have it? Okay, got it. So community boards 10 and 11 received a request from the community, from a member of the community who's in attendance today, Mr. Angelo Bruno. And over the course last year during the season, both our respective offices received complaints specifically about Bay 8th Street portion of Dyker Beach Park. And just to give a quick summary, the main concern from residents who submitted petitions, over 100 signatures to both boards 10 and 11, really talk to the large crowds that now essentially are taking over this portion of the park during the summer months. So this area is a designated barbecue area. And for many years, it has been really a great place to welcome local families to enjoy the outdoors. And in that time, they were relatively small groups. But over the last 2 years, it's partially, a big part of this is the pandemic. Noticeably, many residents have said that it's changed to large numbers of very, very large parties with amplified sound, strobe lights that have become the norm on the weekends, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, some other days as well. Neighbors have also complained about alcohol use, discarded bottles on the street, drug paraphernalia on the walkways, some disorderly groups, fireworks. On the weekends, the park is no longer a place where families or small groups of people can gather to picnic. And the goal really was to talk about these issues and to come up with some recommendations in advance of the summer months to improve conditions there at this, in this section. I just want to show, I could share my screen really quickly just to show Parks Committee members on the area that we're speaking about. So this is the area of Dyker Beach Park, as you can see here. There is a sign at the front with rules. One of the issues that were raised by local residents that the amplified music goes on into the early hours of the morning. The current operating hours are 6 a.m. to 1 a.m. And many of the residents have requested that those hours be changed to ending at 10 p.m. The park in this portion is not lighted, and which adds to the strobe lights and the large groups and the alcohol and disorderly groups. This is just a section of the petition that was submitted to Community Boards 10 and 11 from the residents who live at Independence Gardens, consisting of 198 apartment units. So the apartments fall on the 62nd precinct side. Diker Beach Park in its entirety is within Community Board 10 in the confines of the 6-8 precinct. So those jobs are directed within the park to the 6-8 precinct. Outside of the park, across the street, would be the 6-2 precinct. And the request is to enforce rules and regulations posted on the park. And we have here tonight well-represented PEP, as well as officials from Commissioner Marr's office, so we can begin the conversation of talking about the issues and quality of life conditions that residents are experiencing. And I'm going to stop the share here because I have another picture. There was a mechanical bull last week where they were charging a fee, and there have been, some of the calls we've received here in the District Office of Community Board 10 have really complained about large parties with tents and waitress service and alcohol use. There's just many issues that have been brought to our attention. And I took a walk last weekend, and there was amplified music on a Sunday night at about 6 p.m. and it was very loud. The music was very loud. I know that there are some comments in the chat I've seen pop up on my screen about the commercial trucks, and we'll leave that to the end. I will give an update on that. But we're going to focus tonight on this section of the park and the Independence Gardens residents' concerns and complaints about quality of life.
Josephine?
Yes.
This is Sonia. Just so you know, I am co-chair of the Parks Department, Community Board 11 as well with Eileen. But just so you know, how you doing?
Good. How are you?
Good. Just so you know, I also collected signatures. So those numbers are closer to almost 200. We're short by a few of 200. That's it.
Okay. Thank you, Sonia. Marnie, did you want to?
No. Well, I just want to acknowledge and thank Community Board 10 for hosting this meeting and working with us to address our residents' concerns in your park. We look forward to coming up with some solutions and trying to give some relief to the residents along Bay 8th Street, Benson Avenue, Bay 7th Street, and really Cropsey Avenue and the surrounding area. Captain Chen, I just want to thank you for joining us tonight and your team. And I'm hoping that we can brainstorm and come up with some solutions to address these issues. Thank you.
And I do see here our commanding officer of the 68th precinct, Captain Andrew Tolson, is also present at the meeting. And we introduced earlier the captains of PEP. So maybe first we could talk to Davey Ives. Davey, could you talk a little bit about this portion of the park and permitting? It's our understanding that this area is not permitted. Is it permitted for large events? And is that something that we can address, moving forward?
Well, so good evening, everybody. Thank you for taking the time. And Josephine and Marnie, thank you for putting this together. And it's great to see the two community boards working together. So just want to say thanks to everybody on the call. I might hand it over to either Director McCants or Captain Stanko to go over maybe more from a PEP perspective.
Okay, great.
But as far as permits go, and any park, any event with 20 or more people requires a special events permit. There are rules associated with those permits. If a permit applicant wants to do amplified sound or anything kind of, if you think about it, we're handling, someone's first birthday party to, a 4th of July event in the same permitting process. So there's quite a wide range of events they handle. For the bigger, so if you wanted to do something with amplified sound, you'd need a amplified sound permit from the police department. And, you know, at all of our regular parks permits, which is the majority of them, vending is not allowed. That's a special concession permit that you would need in order to do that. With some permits, you are allowed to have food served, and you need special Department of Health food handling licenses for that. But you know, there are rules for what is allowed under our permits. And without going into that any further, there are also bigger events, which are special events. So anything over 500 people requires a permit from the citywide office, citywide permit events office. So that's like like in Community Board 2, for example, we have Afropunk and the African Arts Festival. Those are festivals that are, you know, 1,000 people come to the park, for example. So it's obviously a much bigger process. There's insurance required, there's bonds, there's extra enforcement, way above and beyond. You know, I think when we go back to the Bay 8 side, you know, I think it's a question of whether any of these permits are being pulled is another question.
Yeah, I don't think there are, from our understanding, there are no permits here. So I guess enforcement would be the next topic, that residents would like to see some enforcement, maybe some education, some enforcement, and then moving on to talk, maybe in the next phase, we could talk about the park rules and seeing if they can be changed in any way.
And maybe before we go, I know I hear someone else trying to jump in as well, but maybe Director McCants, or Captain Stanko, maybe if you want to just maybe talk about how enforcing permits works from parks enforcement standpoint, if you have any experience in that way, feel free to jump in and share anything.
Good evening, everyone. This is Director McCants. Just to give you a little history, I oversee park enforcement citywide. This particular area, the way that we would enforce, usually because PEP, we don't have PEP in every park, we rely a lot on the public and on the park workers that are in the park to alert us for anything that may be out of the ordinary. So if there's amplified sound or an illegal party or anything like that, the maintenance and operations would contact PEP or our central communications, which at that time we would dispatch a PEP officer or a PEP unit, actually 2 officers, over to the condition. In this particular area, what we tried to do, and Captain Stanko started actually last year as the commanding officer in the borough, and we sort of she inherited the issues. And what we tried to do was actually during peak times, which was really the weekends, and then evenings and afternoons during the week, we would have a unit go by to sort of see what's happening. If there's anything happening, just take an account. And then if we encounter, say, a birthday party that had amplified sound or something like that, we would definitely try to reason with whoever's there, have them turn it down. If they don't comply, then we actually give them a summons. It's never come to this, but we also are able to seize the property if we're not getting any cooperation from the individuals. So that's pretty much how we deal with amplified sound when it comes to a park like that. But I understand that there's some major issues that we're necessarily not seeing that you guys would like to have addressed. Is that correct?
Yes. So the amplified speakers are incredibly large. So that the amplified sound, I would say, is a top issue. The hours into the early morning hours where the music continues is, I would say second. Also because this was designated a barbecue area. I see some of the residents are putting in the chat, and when Marnie and I went out to take a walk, we did see evidence of large fires where we saw ambers that I saw some red pails that were in the park, but they were not being utilized for ashes as they are intended. Maybe, signage on those red pails for barbecues, but we were seeing evidence of fires, bonfires in the terrain of the park. And that was a big concern to us. I know I see some other comments in the chat about fireworks. And I think Marnie, we spoke about this a little bit earlier today, that we have received complaints in the past about fireworks in this general area. And in speaking to some of the residents after public notice, we did hear that a lot of the fireworks are also coming in the early morning hours in this portion of the park. Am I correct, Marnie? Did I cover that well?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, I'm sorry.
So I know that, oftentimes 911 jobs, PEP is not there all of the time. And a lot of this does fall upon our local precincts. And for us, it's the 68th precinct because it's within the park. But I want to say that we hope that we can be proactive this year and perhaps do some proactive work in advance of the summer season to deter as much as we can, educate and deter, so that we can restore quality of life to our neighbors who live within Board 11 and who are being impacted by the noise and the disorderly groups. And I have to say, when I was out there a few times, both last summer and this summer, I was very taken aback by the size of the speakers, the loudness. I can understand, residents, please, they cannot open their windows. The music is so loud and it goes to the early morning hours. So I do appreciate everyone being here on the call tonight, and I'm sure together we can come up with a plan to assist our neighbors.
Absolutely.
I think that one thing that is certainly a way to resolve the late hour issue is to change that 1 a.m., the operating hours from 6 a.m. to 1 a.m. to make it a little bit more reasonable. And as the residents have noted in their petition, to make it something like 10 o'clock at night. And can you just refresh my memory, when you get a sound permit, when that expires at 11 p.m.?
10 p.m. Sound permits are issued by the NYPD. And there's, normally a corresponding permit, whether it's parks permit or a block party permit. The next step is then to go to the local precinct. And if I'm saying this wrong, feel free to jump in, NYPD.
Yeah.
But
yeah. I'm sorry. I just want to add, I wanted to mention earlier what Chief Ives was talking about. When we do issue sound device permits, for example, birthday parties and such, the sound device is only limited to 4 hours. And of course, we use our discretion as well. We are not going to give somebody a permit to go from 7 p.m. to 11 p.m. Generally, at the peak at summer times, we will ask that the permits and the events end at 8, and we give them roughly 1 hour for cleanup. So that way they're out of the park at 9, regardless of what time the park closes, because it's just an idea that we want to encourage to stay people in the park after dark. And that's how we work with NYPD and the Community Affairs Office when we issue sound device permits.
Thank you for that clarification.
Does anyone else have, now with parks, I'm sorry, Lawrence, so is it possible for the board to request that in addition to maybe reducing the hours, that there not be amplified sound in this portion of the park because of its close proximity to neighbors across the street? We've done that in past years at different locations. I don't know if that's something that we could flag or request.
I mean, both boards can send a letter of support to Commissioner Moore on that matter. And you should also look into consideration as well what was discussed about changing the hours on the sign itself, because that letter of support itself will help towards that as well.
Yeah, it's our understanding that permits are not being obtained in this particular portion. Jonathan Bova from Community Board 10 has a question.
Yeah, so earlier, I'm quite familiar with this area and the events that are going on over there. And it was mentioned earlier that this section of the park is not lit. So it does get very dark. Once the sun goes down, it does get very dark, and there are a lot of people still in there. So a possible suggestion is, obviously, we just heard from Mr. Marr here that money is tight. So lighting the park is a big job. But in the interim, could we get those portable lights that the NYPD have? Maybe the Parks Department has them too. You see them on construction sites. They're run by those generators. They go up just for the weekends. I mean, once we lit the area, that could deter fires. And when people are lit, maybe they're a little less willing to bend the rules or do things that they might not think people will see. Maybe it'll deter public urination. Obviously, there's a cost involved there. I'm not sure where that would fall, but maybe lighting that area on a Friday and Saturday night. Plus, then someone's gonna have to come and get the lights, so it would force someone to get there and to pick the lights up, unless we leave them there, and then maybe they would then see what's going on and being like, this is maybe out of hand. Just a suggestion.
Thank you. We are joined now by Council Member Justin Brannan. Councilman Brannan, did you want to say a few words? I saw you pop in the room.
Sure. Thank you, Joe. Yeah, I'm just listening in. Obviously, this has been on our radar for quite a while. We want the park to be a place that everyone can enjoy, but there's rules are rules. But also, signage and stuff a sign is just a sign unless we can enforce it. So I think that's something to keep in mind as well. I think that some of the suggestions have been great, and certainly this isn't a new problem. So we've heard a lot of suggestions from residents, over the past 2 years or so. So, we want the park to be a place that everyone can enjoy safely, but at dusk the park closes and we can't have huge parties happening there for myriad reasons, including quality of life and safety issues. So, it comes down to quality of life and it comes down to safety and keeping the park a place that everyone can enjoy. So, I want to support the police as always, however I can, with enforcement with the Parks Police. We're definitely looking to get more money in the budget this year for more parks patrols, the PEP officers. But basically, my office, we just, as always, want to be a partner in, if we need to make noise to get the attention of City Hall or higher ups, that's why we're here. Certainly know this isn't a new problem, but we would like to tackle it and get a handle on it so people can enjoy themselves as long as they're following the rules. But then at night, we can't have parties all night long and into the wee hours of the night. It's against the rules and it's not safe. So want to do whatever I can. I'm just here to listen and, take notes and be as helpful as I can. Thank you, Joe. Thanks. And thanks for organizing this meeting.
Great. Thank you.
I see Sonia's hand up.
Sonia?
Thank you. The one thing that I think that we should think about, those signs are all in English. I don't know if they're in any other language. And I frankly don't even believe that the people that go there read those signs. And I thought that maybe we could start by doing some kind of outreach and education where we could get maybe some members from both community boards to go out there on a weekend with some flyers in different languages, people that speak different languages as a committee, and let them know these are the rules and regulations of things that should or should not be done. We're letting you know in advance So please, we want to work with you, but these are the rules and these are the things that cannot be done. And handle it in a very gentle manner. And then after we've done it for several times, several weekends, and then if it's not being done, then I think enforcement should go in. But I'm thinking that these people may not even know it. A lot of them are immigrants. They don't know, maybe in their country, they're allowed to do these things. Maybe what they need is to be educated to know that this is not permitted. And then give them the flyers in multiple languages. So we could let them know exactly what can and cannot be done.
Right. Sonia, that's a very good idea. Actually, similarly, a number of years ago, the commanding officer of the 6A precinct before our current one now, as well as PEP, the auxiliary officers, a few members of Board 10 had done that on 14th Avenue when there were some issues there with illegal vending and, specifically beer and loud music and large groups. And there was a period that the team went out and, did some handed out flyers in multiple languages of what the rules of the park were, and that there would be enforcement of those rules because of, community and quality of life issues that were resulting. And it was very, very effective. It was at the beginning of the season, but there was enforcement that followed. Certainly. And I think that education is key. And I think that's a good idea to do some outreach in advance. Dan, you have your hand raised?
Yeah, I heard earlier that we had in the past had patrols for this park to see what was going on. I was wondering if we had any data or metrics on fines issued as a result of those patrols, or if there were any follow-ups beyond just the patrol. It would be nice to have maybe just an idea of the data resulting from that.
Okay, I don't know if anyone has that answer, if PEP, or I don't know if Captain Tolson.
Captain Stanko will be able to provide us with some patrols dating to last year and maybe some stats in the summonses that we may have issued.
Yeah, that would be great to have.
Great.
So I can speak a little bit to that. Again, my name is Captain Stanko. I just came to Brooklyn last summer. And Diker was definitely one of our areas that we had to focus on because we were getting feedback from the community about these issues. Because of that feedback, we were able to increase our resources around October. So we do appreciate you guys' feedback about this. I appreciate also Councilman Brandon talking about more PEP officers, because one thing I like to educate people on in these meetings is that, oftentimes people don't realize we don't have a lot of officers. Sometimes even on a weekend, it's 3 or 4, for the entire borough, and that we're trying to increase those numbers. But we don't have as big of an operation as, say, like PD. So we do the best that we can. And a lot of our patrol hours last year came from actually overtime that was authorized to address these problems, and because of the feedback from the public. And so my officers often come in on their days off or stay to do a double shift to address Diker Beach. And we had overtime details Fridays and Saturdays and on Sundays, I believe, pretty much every weekend from October to December. And in terms of the things that we were addressing, it was amplified sound, but it was also a lot of the alcohol issues. We did issue tickets for vending. Some of the vendors, it wasn't a whole, like I want to say a lot of vendors, but it was oftentimes illegal vendors that were the same ones coming back to the park. So not only would they receive a summons for vending the first time, but then subsequent times we've seen them, they get additional fines and violations for not complying with us, telling them not to do it, multiple offenses, et cetera, and so forth. Trying to make sure the barbecues were in the barbecue area. I know we did monitor for some cars on the sidewalk, a lot of unleashed dogs, and amplified sound when we could handle it. So those overtime details often went till 10, 11 o'clock at night, sometimes past that, midnight, 1 a.m. till the close of the park. but because that was extra resources that were authorized, our resources don't extend all the time until that late. And that's something that we're trying to work around right now, because right now our night tour only goes till about 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock. What we are trying to do to prevent this, because I think a lot of what was difficult for us last year was that we started putting extra and a lot of pushback on the big parties, but it was very late in the season already. So this year we've already started trying to increase our presence in the park during April, before the season starts to pick up, to try to address anything that might come, so that they know into the season they can't do this, you know. And we do rely on PD's help a lot. A lot of times what we try to do is, if we can be in the park during the hours we're on duty, then we can inform people and hopefully try to stop them from coming into the park in the first place. If they end up coming into the park, you know, after our officers are able to handle it, then that's something that we would have to, you know, rely on PD to help us with. And we did do some joint patrols with PD. We were really, that really does, you know, go well for us when we were able to do that. You know, hopefully we can do that again this season. But lately we've been checking the park again on Fridays, Saturdays, and Sundays the last couple weekends, mostly at like 9:30ish at night, just to check to make sure none of these parties are trying to take hold before they spiral out of control. Because it's harder for us to correct something once it, you know, now I'm bringing my DJ equipment every weekend, and now you're trying to tell me no, versus if I tell you no at the beginning of the season, it's less likely to get out of hand.
If I can ask a question, you said that fines are given or tickets are given. What happens with, what happens after that? I mean, if they don't pay the fine, they don't show up.
So if they don't pay the fine, the procedure is that it goes to oath court. We issue civil summonses. Our civil summonses at the minimums for unlawful vending, let's say, start at like $250. If they continue to have violations, you know, we can keep adding on and start going up to $500, $1,000. If they decide not to pay the fine, then they have to go to court. And if they don't go to court, then there's other consequences that can potentially reach them. And that's really more so in the role of the oath trials and the oath court to handle, you know, in terms, and we can go to court if they want to contest it, and we can go and say, and give testimony and say, no, this person's doing this, this, and this, to make sure the summons stick. So that's another thing I look for, is if these summonses are going to trial, are we winning the trials or are we losing the trials? And if we're losing them, you know, what can we do? What is the reason for that? And shifting our strategies based off of that information.
Sonia, you have your hand raised?
Yes, I do. So my question is this. Someone mentioned that the people that work in the park workers are the ones that if they see something out of hand, they're supposed to tell some command or someone about it, and then maybe some enforcement will come. So I have two questions. Number one, how many enforcement officers do you have in Brooklyn? And then number two, are there any statistics to show that park workers have complained to someone and for the last 2 years because of the pandemic, when more people are using the park? Are there stats to show that they have complained to someone?
They definitely inform us. So sometimes it's like my director said, to our what's called central communications, which is our dispatch. It's, you know, they receive all the calls and they let enforcement know if there's something that needs to be addressed, if it's getting called in by a different division of parks like maintenance. We do try to track these statistics. So I could look up the numbers for you, but I also get correspondence from a lot of the supervisors in maintenance to discuss this in general. And this is another thing that helped us get extra coverage and extra resources last year. I don't know if Director McCants wants to add anything to that.
Captain, maybe I can.
Or yeah, Davey, if you want.
Yeah. Well, thank you. Yeah. So, you know, if our maintenance people see conditions in the parks, what they do is they call it into our central communications, and then a page goes out to our parks enforcement officers about the condition. Obviously, if it's dire, then we can also call 911. But you know, conditions about breaking parks rules will go through that first method that I just described. And so we can pull a history of that. I think the reality of the situation is that probably most of these infractions are happening after working hours. You know, most of our park staff, we only have one shift, so they're covering the parks from about 8 to 4. You know, so anything after 4 p.m., our workers aren't in the park to document, you know, I think the barbecues and kind of all the activities that we've described. So that's how things get reported on our end. I think I might have these numbers a bit wrong, Captain Stanko, but about staffing, we have about 50 officers in plus or minus in Brooklyn alone. Does that sound right?
The number's a little less,
Okay.
I would say.
So
but also it's one of those things that, you know, it could be one number this month, and then for the summer it changes, it fluxes.
So it fluctuates because some people get stepped up, some people get moved in commands. It's a moving number. But I would say also that, you know, Brooklyn Bridge Park, Captain Stanko, is that true? Do they fund a number of our officers as well?
For Brooklyn Bridge Park,
Yeah.
which is not a part of Diker.
So counted in that 50, if we call it 50 officers, a chunk of those officers, about 25, I believe, only report to Brooklyn Bridge Park.
That would be correct if you're yes.
So when you think about it, if we have 877 parks in Brooklyn, you minus 1 for Brooklyn Bridge Park, so that's 876 parks. You have a little less than 25 officers to cover it 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. So
that's more of a correct number. And then during the summer, when our pools and beaches open, that number gets reduced as we have to maintain coverage. We do have academy classes that come out. We have one in right now, so that also ups our numbers on occasion too. We are expecting some new officers, but I would say on about average, Davey's correct, 25, but that's 25 again for full day, full borough.
And I think that's really important for everybody on the call, so the next time you call, you know, looking for, you know, a PEP officer to slide down a fire pole and get in their car and start driving through, you know, Diker Beach all the way to Bay 8th Street. It's just, you know, we have 25 people to cover 876 parks, you know, every single day at all hours of the day. So at a certain point, it just becomes a staffing issue where enforcement is difficult. So that's why we're relying on creative solutions here.
I agree.
I just want to also interject. I'm so sorry. Sometimes people don't really know this about parks, and that we actually don't get calls from the 911 system. We do get information from the 311 system. So some people, when I've gone to community board meetings before, ask, you know, I call 911, why doesn't park show up? We don't actually get dispatched through the 911 system. However, I do advise people to use 311. Some people think 311 is just, you know, whatever, I put my complaint in and it goes nowhere. It doesn't. It actually, usually it will, if it doesn't get, you know, brought to me for parks enforcement, at the very least, we get a database a lot of times, or accumulation of how many complaints there are. And that is something that can be used to authorize like more resources to try to bump it up from the 25, or, you know, like I said, get overtime details, or, you know, we have some other kinds of task force that we can sometimes utilize. And I'm trying to get over there to help with those, to kind of boost up that 25, you know, give or take.
Captain Stanko, may I ask a question? Do you have any data on, let's say, repeat offenders? You know, people who are blasting music, if it's a DJ or something that has the amplified music. Do you know if you have repeat offenders, the same person doing this over and over again?
The only way I could look that data up is to see if we summons that person. If we summons them multiple times, you could say they were a repeat offender. That can be hard for us to track because, you know, understand, again, Parks doesn't, you know, we are unarmed. So we are peace officers, you know, and a lot of times, yes, we give summonses, but we do try to correct conditions with, you know, verbally speaking to the community. You know, especially again, if there's a large group of, let's say, 50 people and I have 3 officers there, you know, they need to also maintain safety. And that's also why we rely on PD to help us. So what would be missing from that data, because I could only take it from our summonses, which is what we track, is if we do get compliance without a summons, I don't have data on repeat offenders that way. But, you know, officers do, you know, community policing, and they are familiar with people and are hopefully telling their supervisors and then telling me, hey, this person is constantly there, you know, and then if I know it is a repeat offender, then we can try to either work with PD or strategize other enforcement issues to get that person to be in compliance or stop.
Okay, thank you. Marnie and then Anne.
Thank you, Joe. So I'm just wondering, since we're so limited in the resources, if we can put something together. We're coming up on May, before really the height of the season there. I know we have issues there now. If we could coordinate between PEP, Parks, and the 6-8 precinct to do some enforcement out there, since we're limited in the hours that PEP could monitor that area, so we don't have the repeat that we have now.
Also, you guys are seeing, I heard like earlier, you guys are seeing amplified sound at like 6 p.m. So if you're seeing things at a certain time, anytime we ask for feedback, that's kind of one of the questions I ask. Because like I said, I've been sending out officers out there on weekends, and like they've been getting there around 9 o'clock, and we haven't actually seen any big parties or amplified sound so far. But then, like I just heard one of you say it was at 6 p.m. So
yeah, I was there last Sunday at 6 p.m.
Okay.
And there was amplified music. Again, I mean, I didn't call 311. I knew we were having this meeting, but that is important feedback. But what we've heard from residents leading up to this meeting today was that a lot of times that the amplified sound begins in the afternoon and can go all the way up to 2 or 3 a.m.
Okay, so I'll try to send officers there a little earlier to check on it, you know, and at some different times, just to see if we can find out what's going on so far this season. I know last season was different.
Right. Now, do you have the ability when you see amplified sound to disconnect it, or at what point, I mean, do you have the ability or capability to shut it down?
Like Director McCants said, we do have ways to escalate, including confiscating equipment. Like I said, we have to balance that with safety. You know, if I have 3 officers trying to confiscate a speaker from a group of 50 people who may have been drinking, you know, they have to take that into consideration. Again, that would be a situation where they would have to ask, you know, PD for help, or if they have a large contingency of like, you know, multiple speakers and DJ equipment, then that's a lot of things to confiscate. So the officers are always balancing these decisions and trying to get compliance with what's going on.
Okay, thank you. Anne, then Sonia.
I think alongside enforcement, which is really an uphill battle given the numbers, that we really need to look at some change in the regulations, i.e. elimination of the barbecue component entirely and closing the park down to groups at dusk.
Sonia?
Can I just respond? to
What
that?
time is dusk? What
Yes.
time is dusk?
I was gonna just respond.
Oh,
So
thank you.
Sonia, and those are great points. So our signs used to say dusk. We have found that in a court of law, it's kind of hard to determine when dusk is exactly. So on all of our parks, the standard times are either 10 p.m. or 1 a.m. for standards on park signs. So those are the two signs that for general parks that we use.
Are we unable to say 9 o'clock or 8 o'clock?
I can check. I don't know if Director McCants or Captain Stanko, if you know more about the specific signage and want to chime in on that.
I'm sorry, David, can you repeat that about the signage?
Yeah, or either Captain Sager or Director McCants, just about the times on the different signs for parks and how that relates to, you know, what we can do regarding enforcement. Maybe Director, do you want to take that?
I think that, yeah, I would defer to Director McCants on that one.
To my understanding, it became universal about a year or two ago. I don't know if it's going to go back, but that was the standard, 10 o'clock or 1 a.m. Prior to that, it would take the community board, the borough commissioner, to reason on what would be the best use of the park. So I think that would be something that we probably should table right now and come back with a solid answer, being that there's a new administration in at this point.
I would also say that, you know, if the community board wants to change the hours to earlier, we would be open to a letter to that, and then we can explore that and maybe come back with you for a couple options of what our standard hours are.
Right, thank you.
Okay.
That's great. Sonia?
Yes, so this is, okay, so how long is it gonna take then, Mr. Ives, for them to come to a resolution about the time? Because as we know, the summer's not here yet and they're partying already. And the only thing that behooves me is that when COVID started, you know, they said, okay, if you live in an apartment building, the safest place for you to go is to the park. Okay, but I think these people took it one step further, and this has been going on for more than 2 years. And I assure you that the people that live in that development can confirm that it's been going on for years now, but it's gotten progressively worse. So my question is this: how long is it going to take for us to change the rules? How long is it going to take for enforcement to take place? And when could we start doing outreach to educate these people until something solid does come through in terms of changing the time or no barbecue signs or whatever?
Well, I can speak to the specifically changing the sign. Thank you, Sonia. As far as the sign goes, you know, I think it starts with a letter from the community board 10 and 11, or about the hours, and we can turn around a sign in a matter of hours. Director McCants, I see you got your hand up if you want to chime in.
Yes, I wanted to just say that even if we put the time up or we brought the time back, it's still going to take an effort from the enforcement agencies. I haven't spoken to the 6-8 either one of the precincts yet, but I'm sure that we can sit down and come up with an enforcement action. Many of you probably have heard last year, 2 years ago it started, but Washington Square Park had a very similar situation that we had to address in Manhattan, where people were coming out with DJ equipment, having large parties and things like that. I think that once we know that it's happening and we're going to address it, if we can work with the police department, I think we could definitely get a handle on large amplified sound setups, and then start working on the smaller ones and try to get this thing under control. I've instructed Captain Bedward, who will be overseeing our night tour, that prior to the end of her tour between 9 and 11, we're going to have someone, a unit come by daily just to monitor the park, take pictures and things of that nature. And I think with the information being shared and communicated between the precinct, members of the public, the maintenance and operations team, I think that if we're all sharing our information and we're all putting in an effort, I think that we'll be able to address a lot of the things that we're witnessing. So I think that this week, if not today, well, definitely not today, but tomorrow, if Captain Stenko, myself, we can get a conversation with the precinct, we can sort of get some kind of strategy going where we can address these problems. And I think that once we are able to get to it, I think that we'll be able to stop it.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that, Director McCants. Our Community Board 10 Chair is here. Lori Willis, you have your hand raised.
Yes, thank you, Josephine. And thank you everyone for this meeting, and especially the residents who come out and, really let us know what's going on. That's so important. Please continue to, although sometimes it doesn't feel like it's getting you anywhere, but please continue to report everything to 311, because data is something that really is looked at by the agencies. But one thing that I did wanted to just bootstrap on to what was being said is that I really feel at this point, based upon the reports of the goings on at the park, which are clearly in violation of the law, not just parks rules, but the law. You can't have, open fires. There's the, residents report all these goings on, which I don't want to go through again because we've heard so much of it. I really do implore the precinct and, Commander Tolson, if you could, I believe that if there are some violations issued or people are dispersed, that, it sets an example. So if you do a sweep, the word will spread, and these people who are setting up big parties will, learn that, oh, well, maybe I shouldn't, make arrangements to have all this equipment there and have all these people there and have this event, because they realize that it's not tolerated. It's not permitted, and it's not tolerated. That maybe an initial step because of, let's face it, our city agencies, all of them, including, our police department, are taxed. They have limited resources, but maybe that one step would go a long way in starting the beginning of the end of this trend. Which did not exist a couple of years ago, where to the extent that it is now. So I would ask, the 68th precinct, maybe, I know your resources are taxed, but if you can have patrols go by, disperse these people, if there are fires, if there are fireworks, if there are these things that are obviously going on for which an officer can, clearly see a violation, that, possibly a sweep like that be done. To try to stop this trend. So thank you.
Thank you, Lori.
Josephine, can I respond?
Yes. Hi, Captain Wilson. Welcome.
I waited to hear everything. I actually was making some notes. That was actually D.I. Gonzalez, our auxiliary coordinator, commanding officer. So I really like Sonia's idea of starting with education. We've already started enforcement, just so you know. So the first really warm weekend that we've had was April 15th. My offices issued 8 oath summonses and 1 C summons for open container. So we were already out there. We're already starting enforcement, people hanging out in the park. So they're there. But as for the part where we're talking about the handball courts over there, 6-8 takes ownership of that. I've spoken to Tao Chen. Captain Chen about this. It's on us. It's on the 6-8 precinct. And like you said, we are taxed for resources. But I was just asking the auxiliary coordinator, CO, if we can use auxiliaries to hand out some of this information. So Sonia brought up a good point. Like I saw that sign that you put up, Josephine, earlier. I didn't see if it was in multiple languages. And it's very small. So, and then depends on what part you're walking in, do you even see that sign? So I think it's a great opportunity for us to just, this weekend's supposed to start warm. Of course, our auxiliaries are gonna be working the 5-borough bike tour on Sunday, but get this started on Saturday. Go out there. So I don't know, Josephine, if you have any literature that we can hand out, maybe from the Parks Department in all these different languages, that I'll have my auxiliaries to go out there and hand out if they're starting to set up parties on this weekend. I think it's supposed to be a little bit warm, but starting Tuesday, the weather's going to be 70, and that's really the following weekend. I think it's going to be really in motion starting up.
I think we could get something together in a few days, maybe not ready for this weekend, but certainly next week. We'll run it by Parks, and I'll pull what we did last time, and we'll get it translated in Spanish and in Chinese perhaps. And I think that would be great, Captain. That's a wonderful idea. Thank you so much.
Yeah,
that would really be helpful.
Yeah, if we start out with the education before the enforcement, right? Because maybe going to a Sweet 16, it's not the best look for police officers to start writing 10 people of drinking and they didn't know the rules. Like, we can do enforcement, but it's a bad way to learn that. So like you said, if we can give them forms, you can't drink here, you can't set these parties, and how to get a permit if they're actually gonna have a party. I know somebody in the Parks Department said about 500 people. I don't think none of our parties are getting over 500 people. So, but over 20, yes, we have seen 20.
Right.
My suggestion was lights at one point, but then I'm reading in the chat, somebody said that would invite more people because if it's lit up, they're gonna think they're gonna hang out there. So let's nix the lights there. That is a good point, because then they will hang out. They'll say, oh, it's lit up here. Now we have a place to hang out. Because I know a lot, they hang out on 14th Avenue and 8th. Right there, it's kind of lit up where the benches are. They try to hide behind like the structure where the bathrooms are, and we go over there and we do enforcement. I also have my officers going out there on the weekends. I started this last year. They're setting up early. My officers had to beat them there. So they're loading up trucks, they're bringing coolers. So I instructed my officers to look in the coolers to make sure there's no alcoholic beverages in there. They have a lot of soccer games on Saturdays and Sundays, and they're setting these up really, really early. So I had to have my officers go in there. I'm gonna see if I have any money in my budget to give officers maybe on the midnight to stay and do enforcement in there, but Dyker Beach Park is not the only park it's in the 6-8. We have Owl's Head, Leif Erikson Park, McKinley Park, and Shore Road Park.
Right.
These are all parks that residents are demanding the 6-8 precinct handle their particular problems that are in there. So we are stretched thin, but every complaint we're going to have here is important to me, it's important to my officers, and we want to make the quality of life and for the residents of Dyker Beach Park, Owl's Head, all the parks here is our top priority here. So these are some things that I think we should get the ball rolling here. But my officers are going to be out this weekend, Friday and Saturday, and we're going to do enforcement. So like somebody said, if you see something there and people hanging out, drinking, call 311. That will garner a response. I do work late on Friday nights. I'm here. I go out with my special ops lieutenant and my NCOs, and we do enforcement there. I've done it myself. So we have to nip it in the bud early in the season so that we can set the tone early. So, and maybe a list of, I just tasked my special ops lieutenant to give us some kind of summonsable offenses. But people who are drinking now, so somebody said, oh, what happens when they get a summons? So what happens in the NYPD now, you get an oath summons for drinking. You don't respond to that summons, then they would have to get 3 oath summonses before it would turn into a criminal court summons. So if it turns into a criminal court summons, then you don't respond to a criminal court summons, then there'll be a warrant out for your arrest. So there are steps for us. Like I said last week, the only way you can write a C summons for an open container is if somebody is an oath recidivist. To become an oath recidivist, which is a civil summons, it has to be 3 times that you haven't answered one. And then it will go into a C summons. So that's also another issue that we're coming across.
Right. Captain, have you also enforced for the amplified sound? Is that something you're able to do as well?
Yeah, so with that, if they don't have the proper permits for it, we have to have officers that are sound meter qualified so that they can write that summons. So I have to reach out to my training sergeant to have some officers that are actually trained in that. They have to be trained in the sound meter device so that they can write that summons. Not any officer can write it unless they have the training.
Okay, thank you.
But I'm open for any other ideas that you can. I'm going through the chat here to see if anybody else has any other ideas. There's some volunteers that'll hand out some of the literature for us.
I volunteer, Captain. This
There you
is
go,
Sonia.
Sonia. We'll
I
see
will
you,
speak to
Sonia.
them in Spanish. But you know what? One other thing also that as a woman, I would go in with a gentle touch as a woman, and I would approach the women in these families, not the men, because there's always that testosterone kicking in. But if we women go there with a gentle touch and tell them and explain to them in a language that they speak, any language, we could probably get to them and make them understand these are the rules and regulations. And I guarantee you, Captain, they don't read those signs. It's been going on for so long, they assume it's okay, but they don't know that it's not. Some may know, absolutely some know. But I would tend to think that the nice, gentle, maternal touch will work more so than going in very aggressively. And like you said, you don't want to give somebody a ticket, their kid's having a 16-year-old party. Yeah. You know, that doesn't look good. But if you come in with the gentle touch and a smile and speaking their language, I think that'll make quite a big difference.
Yeah, I was also thinking my auxiliary offices and also my community affairs offices. So they look like a cop, but they don't have the gun. So, and then my community affairs offices to hand out the flyers and the literature. So let's start that. I like it.
Thank you. Diane, I know we have a number of, there's about 3 residents who have been.
This is Kyle Chen from the 6-2. Do you mind if I jump in for a second?
Oh, sure. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Captain Tolson pretty much said, everything, I need to say. I understand the part, it's in, the 6A, but it affects, mostly it affects the residents in the 6-2. And I'm well aware of that. It's been brought up since pretty much my first community council meeting here. It's an issue that we know of. Last year was COVID, we all know, and how that, and we've tried to give them a little bit leeway at the park, but then we try to enforce our law a little bit, for the quality of life issue, around the parks area. And we've been working with, Captain Tolson in the 6A precinct to address those issues. But as Captain Tolson have said, it's well said, we're stress thin and we cannot, focus all our resources in that one area. But when we get a call, we do respond. That's one thing that we do because every call matters to us. So I just want to say, if there's, if any time the 6A precinct and the Parks Department decide to do a join up, and feel free to reach out to me, and 6-2 could jump in. We could have a join up between the 2 precincts and the Parks Department, and then we could now try to clean this up. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Diane, did you want to?
Yes, so I just want to clarify, before we move to public discussion or the residents' concerns, Lori, do you have anything else you want to say? Your hand is raised.
Yes, I just wanted to say that I wasn't implying that the police go and, start giving violations really for, people who are sort of, just peacefully having a party. I was really talking about the fires that go on, really the more flagrant. I understand that open, like an open bottle is an easier, violation to write. But, people, we've had lots of complaints about illegal fireworks, and really things of a more hazardous nature, right? So I feel that if we can start just having a presence and showing enforcement with regard to these items, and again, I do understand everyone's taxed, of course, together with beginning outreach, I feel that definitely putting things in different languages, of course, always helps because it's better communication and that's always better. But, for some reason, it has gotten to the point that it has. I think it's a little bit of a fever pitch when we have this many people showing up and really imploring us to try to reach out and please get them some relief. So I think that there should be outreach, definitely. I would, again, still ask for enforcement, especially, like I said, with regard to these more hazardous things, but that we definitely monitor it and keep track. And I do urge, our residents to please, keep us informed as to whether or not the steps that are being taken, the outreach, everything else over the progression of time is effective so that we can circle back, and if it's not working, continue to just, keep working on this. And I do appreciate, Sonia, your willingness to go out and educate. I really do appreciate that. I know it has not been easy for the residents, and we've been fielding these complaints in addition to many others that are related to this for a very long time. And I'm glad that we're able to all have this meeting and talk about it and, try to work out a plan of action because you do need some relief.
Thank you, Lori. Dan?
Yeah, really quick. And it seems like small potatoes. I agree with a lot of what's already been said in terms of the interventions needed. This is so tiny. I feel a little embarrassed suggesting it, but also in order to get people to go through the proper permitting process, which we do want people to do because we do want people to enjoy the parks and be able to have events there. We just want them to do it legally and through the proper forms. Maybe if the Parks Department could think about updating their graphic standards for their park signage, the one that's in front of all of the parks, or creating new signage specifically for open areas where this does happen that actually has a link maybe to the permitting website, so that people know that there is a website, that because you kind of have to know that permits are a thing in order to go and get one. So if we have a link to the website and just an explanation of what the permits are for on the signage in the parks themselves, beyond just the rules of what you can't do, but also how do you go about getting the proper authorizations. And that would also help and supplement any flyering or anything else that we actually do in the parks. Just like maybe a parks-wide update to those graphic standards could probably be helpful.
Thank you, Dan. Okay, I see a hand raised. Tim Law.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
You hear me? Yes. Good evening. I just want to say a few words. I've been living in Bensonhurst for 50 years. What we've been doing, we work closely with the NCO officer, 62nd Precinct. Okay, thank you, Captain Chen. Captain Chen, you still there? Thank you for your support, Captain. Thank you. Last month, we took a walking tour at several parks. You mentioned the park have a lot of problems. Our park have a lot of problems too. So we took a walking tour over there. I myself, I speak few Chinese dialect over there. I advise the committee members in the park, don't smoke, don't gamble, don't use the loud amplified sound systems. They listen to me. That's very, very important. Education. Song Ye mentioned that education very important. Okay, I talk to them because I speak their language. Advise them, don't do these things because the park is for all community members, not for few members only. Don't smoke there. Don't smoke while you wander in the park, please. See, so we must work with the police officer. The park workers, we work together, closer together. I give them the flyers too, written in Chinese, educate them, okay? You have to follow the rule, regulation of the park. Don't do whatever you want to do. You cannot do that, okay? Thank you very much.
Thank you very, very much. I believe that there is a John Lombardo I saw in the chat. And he had his hand raised. I don't see his hand raised. I don't know if he's still on the call.
Yeah, Angelo Bruno, who helped organize this, his hand has been raised. I know there are 3 other people. I guess we can ask, we can move to public for, some quick comments here because they've been listening intently. Angelo Bruno, you should be able to speak now. You're in the meeting room. Thank you so much for bringing this in a formal way to the boards, and Sonia for going out and collecting hundreds of petition signatures that you submitted to our offices. So Angelo, you'd like to say something?
Yes, I would. I would like to say thank you very much to Sonia for the help that she gave us. Right now, I'm sitting with my partner, Pat Capuano, and my wife, Susan. I'm hearing a lot, and I appreciate this. I really do. The captain from the 6A, I met him at one of the community board meetings, Captain Dolson, Captain Chang, I've been talking to back and forth. They know my frustrations, but the only problem, I'm hearing a lot, but for my quality of life, for my people in my complex in Independence Gardens at 198 units, it's a shame that we lost our quality of life. I have residents from Shore Parkway to Little Independence on Bay 8 will not sit out on their stoop anymore. So where is our quality of life? Someone made a remark one day to me that, well, we feel bad that these people that are in the park don't have a backyard or they don't have a barbecue. Well, I live in a garden apartment and I don't have a backyard and I don't have a barbecue, but I know I will not go in that park and do what these people are doing. And as far as the sign and the times, I heard the park department people talking, 1 o'clock in the morning, what good could come out of anything at 1 o'clock in the morning? I'm not going to be in that park at 1 o'clock in the morning. It's to the point that I'm so frustrated. I don't have an answer, and I'm hearing everybody, but I just hope there's going to be some action. I understand what the captain of 6'8". I understand, Sonia, let's give our flyers and stuff. As I've been talking to Sonia about this and talking to my NCOs, Michael, Jerry, and everybody, it's not this first summer, it's not the first year. I'm going on 4 to 5 years of asking, sending pictures. There could never be a permit. And my people won't even walk across the park. How fair is that from us? I lost my park. I won't walk in the park in the afternoon late at night. Because first place, you can't even walk through the park when it comes on the weekends. They take over. There's weddings. There's girls walking out with black evening gowns serving cocktails out of a white tent. How can we allow this? And I'm going to repeat myself. I don't have a backyard. And I definitely don't have a barbecue pit here.
Thank you, Angela. We are committed to working with you and the neighbor, so I appreciate you again. I'm going to move. We have 2 other neighbors. Barbara. Barbara, you should be able to speak now. Do you have a comment or a question regarding this?
Might need to unmute.
You're still muted, Barbara. I don't know, maybe she's having difficulty. Barbara? Okay, I'm going to go to Georgine Kenny. Georgine, you have to unmute yourself.
Hi.
Hi, Georgine.
Hi, my name is Renee Canigliaro, and I have a daughter who lives in Independence Gardens. I'm here.
We're having trouble hearing you.
I'm sorry.
Okay,
Hold
better.
on. Better?
Yeah.
My name is Renee Canigliaro, and I have a daughter who lives here in Independence Gardens. And I'm here with Georgine Kenny. She's hosting a Zoom party because this is very important to all of us. I am a resident also. I live on 15th Avenue, and I know you on a personal note, Josephine, having lived on 14th Avenue when we had the problems of a century with the cars being burned in the park.
Yes.
And the solution there was that I used to go into the park with the police officers, and then we came to the solution that we closed the gate so that the cars could no longer go in that park and only people would be able to go in, and it solved that problem. This is a very simple problem from what I see. I don't understand why, where, when this was discussed that the park should close at 1 o'clock in the morning. That is ludicrous. I live on 15th Avenue, and it is bizarre. The sounds, the amplifying music that goes on in the park. I feel like I'm in the musical Selena. It's crazy what's going on. The park should be closed at dusk, the way it was years ago on 14th Avenue. And it's only new to me that it's closing at 1 o'clock in the morning. It should close at dusk, at sunset. And these people should go home. And as far as water bottles, you should be looking into alcohol and vodka. It's crazy what's going on. And what about the people spilling over onto the Independence Gardens who are drunk? What about the people walking on 15th Avenue who are peeing on my lawn where I have a gardener that I have to pay for? This is craziness that was going on. It's very simple. It's a very simple solution. The one I found on 14th Avenue was to close up that gate. And it was closed in due time. And the problems were solved. There were no more cars being brought in there. They were all insurance jobs, and that ceased. Now, the problem here is that you have little Selena going on in the park to all hours of the night. My children are grown. They're all professional. They're grown children. But what about the people who have little kids? Even though it's summer nights, they have to go to bed. You cannot sleep on 15th Avenue. You cannot sleep, imagine, on Bay 8th Street. It's crazy. I pay real estate taxes to have a private home. I have my own backyard. I feel sorry for these people that live in apartment buildings. But, you know, the park should close at a certain hour. Sunset, close it up, 7 o'clock, done. They aren't going to leave the park, arrest them. That's it. There's water bottles. You see there's water bottles. They're not water bottles. They're vodka bottles. And this is what's going on. You have people that are pissing on your properties. There are people that are vomiting. There's people that are devastating. You have no idea what's going on. I live on 15th Avenue. I live on 15th Avenue all my life. I lived for the most part as a young girl, moved up the block when I was 13 years old. Moved to 14th Avenue where I had the privilege of meeting you, Josephine, to rectify that problem.
Yes.
And now I'm back on 15th Avenue, but I have a daughter who lives in the garden apartment. She lives alone. Why should she be subject, if she's walking her little dog, to some drunk or somebody that is, you know, possibly going to be violent on this property? It's ridiculous. Close the park at sunset. That's it. Bottom line. There's no 1 o'clock in the morning. There's no 1 o'clock in the morning. That's beyond. And as far as whoever spoke earlier, with all due respect, we don't want to put lights. We don't want them to stay longer. We want them to get out of here. Okay, I'm very sorry. I pay 10 grand real estate taxes to have you don't know what's going on this area. I'm sorry.
Okay.
Things have to change.
Thank you so much. So Diane, I think we've heard,
I see a Barbara Buchalter.
Yeah, I'm having trouble. I will try her once more. She does, all she has to do is unmute. I don't know what the issue is there.
And as I said, there was a John Lombardo that was in the chat.
Yeah, I don't
stand up, but I don't see him.
Yeah, I don't see him any longer. So I really think the sentiment has been very, well expressed from residents who are very, very frustrated here. And that's why we're here tonight, and we're here to make a plan, and we're here to work together. We've done it before. I said it earlier, 14th Avenue, another example of times where the board has come together and worked with our agencies to correct issues. And we heard from Captain Tolson, who is committed to beginning this weekend. There's a plan, outreach plan. We're going to work on, flyers. And I think that the board now should really, both boards really come together to make some recommendations in a very formal way, and to begin this process of a plan, of a proactive plan. So Diane, I'll turn it back to you.
Diane, I have a question. This is Sonia.
Yes. Go ahead, Sonia.
What is a little Selena? What is that? She kept saying that. What is that?
I don't know.
Could she respond?
I think that she was referring to some of the wait staff that are in the park.
Okay.
Okay. Marnie, is there anything that you would like to add to this?
This is Tao Chan again. I'm sorry. Just one last thing. Just in response to Andrew Bruno and the other resident that lives in Independence Garden. The 6-2 precinct, I already changed the tours for my NCO officer in the area to 6-2. So they are working a later tour to address those quality of life issues around the area, around around the park. That's outside and around the park. So that's already being noted, and the change already been made. So my officer, Detective Jerry and Officer Chow will be, working 6-2 until 2 o'clock in the morning to address those issues.
Thank you.
Thank you. Marnie, is there anything that you would like to add before we move on?
No, I think we have it. I just want to add a Captain, thank you for reassigning the NCOs. Maybe it would be helpful if we can put their emails in there, or would you rather have residents call 311?
Their emails should be on, I could, I'm not sure. I think Mike should be on the calls.
And Marnie, what we could also do is we have everyone's email who registered for tonight. And so we can send a follow-up email to everyone with contact information, suggestions of calling 311. We could work on that.
Okay,
yeah,
great.
Well, 311 definitely works because, we, track all the 311 stats and all the 311 that comes in. And then if, one area we get tons of 311 call, that would be certainly we a red flag for us. So that's something, if you see something on, and 311 call does help, help us to get the resource too, in a way.
Beautiful, thank you.
Great. So I would suggest that the 2 community boards have a subsequent meeting to come up with a definite plan as to how we can proceed. I'm looking for suggestions from my counterpart in.
I think we heard from Parks too that we can make a request. Both boards can make a request
For the time change.
Yes.
Yes. And so would you like me to call for a motion for that from CB10?
Yeah, Anne has her hand raised. Anne, you're on mute.
Let's not forget about the possibility of eliminating the barbecue component.
Okay. Okay. So I will, for the time being right now, I would just entertain the first motion to write a letter of support in changing the operating hours of the park. If I can get a second to that motion from CB10. Thank you, Justin. And everyone in favor, please raise your hand.
Great.
Okay. And if CB11 would like to do the same?
Sonia, would you like to put it forward?
Yes,
Want to put a motion on the floor to support CB10's recommendation to reduce the hours?
absolutely, without a doubt. And if we can add also about the barbecue, if that could be included in there,
I think that would have to be
a
separate.
separate, okay,
Separate
thank
letter of
you,
support. That's why we're doing it separately.
thank you.
A second? Jeff Harris, anyone opposed? So moved.
Okay. And is there a motion to write a letter of support to eliminate the barbecue pits or the areas there from CB10?
Was that your motion, Ann?
Yes, but I'm not on the Parks Committee.
Gotcha. Okay. Is there anyone on the Parks Committee?
Yeah, I'll motion. Chris
I'll
Ellison,
second.
I'll motion to eliminate the barbecuing.
Okay,
And a second? From CB10, anybody?
Dan, did you second it?
Yeah, I'll second.
Oh, Dan, thank you. Okay. All in favor, raise your hand.
Okay, any opposed? Okay,
Okay. And CB11?
Put, I put a motion in to eliminate the barbecuing.
Second? Janet Perry, anyone opposed? Jeff, you're opposed? Motion carried.
Okay. Well, thank you very much, everyone.
so we'll put together a flyer as a next step plan of action for outreach. And of course, we'll work with the precinct and PEP. We will send, we will work on that flyer. I'll reach out to Davey, once we, could put a draft together in multiple languages, make sure it's okay with parks. We'll get those two, once the full board votes, we'll get that letter out as quickly as we can to parks. Of course, we're always in communication with our great Captain Tolson and his team. And I thank the 6-2 also for being here. I also want to mention, Diane, that there was a lot of comments in the chat about the commercial parking overnight, which is not on the agenda for this meeting, but I will send members who were in attendance tonight an update. We have the 68 precinct just recently had a booting and a towing operation there. We had an interagency meeting with our local elected officials and multiple agencies to work in many different ways to come up with different solutions to help the situation with the illegal commercial parking around the block. And I will update you. It's not on the agenda for this meeting, but I assure you that we are all working on it. Diane, I'll turn it back to you.
And I want to thank everyone for participating this evening. Hopefully with our suggestions moving forward and with the cooperation of both the community boards and the precincts, we will be able to restore some quality of life to the residents and eliminate the problems that exist in that part of the park.
And we want to hear from
Diana,
you. And we want to continue, I'm sorry, we will continue working together. So this doesn't have to be the last meeting. So we're not going to just have a meeting and say goodbye, but rest assured that we will continue to work with neighbors. Sonia, I'm sorry.
It's okay. I just want to also second what you said, Diane. I agree. This collaboration is a good start to better things to come. So I'm glad that this meeting finally took place. So thank everyone involved in putting it together.